Hey again, everybody. It's Guardian Enzo, your anime buddy, coming to you live again from Kyoto, Japan, in the middle of rainy season. And guess what? It's raining. But I'll take that over the scorching hot and humid weather that we're going to have as soon as rainy season is over, most likely. So, no complaints from me about a little rain. And I hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world. Of course, I'm here to share with you another anime season preview, and it's summer 2022. And this is what I would call a transitional season. I think we knew that 2022 was going to have some extremely big, very hyped shows airing, and I think that's very much going to turn out to be the case. But most of them have ended up in fall. So the fall preview is going to be a honking big one. The amazing number of hype shows that are going to be airing in fall, including the second core of one that it's airing now, Spy Family, but a bunch of other stuff too. I don't even want to get into it now. Really, in fact, of all the shows that I knew were on the radar that were huge hype shows for me, the only ones that dodged fall are Vinland Saga, which ended up spilling over into 2023, which kind of is what I expected, and one that's the clear highlight of this season's preview, which is Made in Abyss, the second season of Made in Abyss. So other than that, pretty much every other big show, both in terms of my expectation and in terms of the sheer hype, is landing in fall, which is just going to be a crazy season. But that is what it is. We're here to talk about summer. And to the truth be told, for a summer season, summer and winter, as you probably know, tend to be the smallest and often the weakest anime seasons in any given year. It's not a bad-looking summer, as summers go. There are, a fairly typical number of shows in the mid-40s, and I'm previewing about a third of them in my written preview, as I always do. I don't plan to, it just works out that way. And there are a couple of pretty big ones there. There's one that should have been huge, as big as any of them, as far as I'm concerned. We'll get to that in a minute, but unfortunately, it's not, for reasons that we'll cover. Just to go over some of the dotting the I's and crossing the T's for those of you who may be new to this process. I always do a written season preview, which I've been doing now for over 10 years, and I'll, of course, link that below the video. And I do the video season preview, which I've been doing now for, a little over a year, I guess. And the written preview is the more comprehensive. It's not a total comprehensive preview of everything on the schedule. I don't do those, but it's shows that I can at least muster up marginal interest in. As I say, it usually ends up being about a third of the schedule, and this season it's about 14 plus one. We'll get to the plus one. This version, the YouTube version, I'll talk about many of the shows on my preview. Because it's only 14, I can cover most of them, but some of them will get pretty brief mentions or none at all, and I'll go a little deeper in the ones that I'm really hyped about. That's what I always do. I use the video for a little more depth and the written one for a little more breadth. So without further ado, let's jump right into the first show on the schedule. And there can be absolutely no question for me that is Made in Abyss, the second season, Retsujitsu no Ougonkyou. And Made in Abyss was made my top 20 series of the 2010s comfortably. By production by Kinema Citrus was really in the handful of most visually beautiful anime I've ever experienced on television. Certainly, Kevin Penkin's soundtrack is astonishing. My buddy Jake's translations are astonishing, and he is working on the second season too, by the way. So I mean, it's just, there's no way this. I was thinking, if this and Made in Abyss, if this and Mob Psycho and Vinland all premiered in the same season, my gosh, what a battle for supremacy for me that would be. They ended up getting spaced out, and none of them directly competing against each other. which I suppose is for the best, but it would have been kind of fun to have that happen. But Made in Abyss is a big one. I was kind of surprised actually because the theatrical releases did very well, and that seemed like a good format for this series because it could get even grosser and grimmer and darker than it can on television. Not that it held a hell of a lot back, and there isn't a ton of unadapted material. So I think this season is going to pretty well catch the anime up with the manga. So we'll be in waiting for a while after this season is over. Maybe we go into another movie, or maybe there's a hiatus of a considerable time before even that. I don't know, but we're getting one core, the same staff, which doesn't surprise me because it's very clear the first season was a complete labor of love. I love Made in Abyss. I fully recognize that the author of this series is, to my way of thinking, he must be a little bit messed up in the head, because it's just his name is Tsukushi Akihito, and he's a brilliant writer. He's got some of Togashi in him, no question about it, but he has an almost fetishistic approach to the young characters in this series, and the way he really seems to like to put them through existential and physical torment, which at times gets extremely disturbing. But what makes this series disturbing is also what makes it so impossible to look away from. It just leaves nothing on the table. It's balls out. It's intense. It's dark. It does manage to be uplifting and funny too, because the characters, the core characters are, they're so great. And there is joy in this beautiful world, but it's also a terrible world that Tsukushi has created. And again, Kojima, Masayuki, all the same cast, all the same staff, I should say. Kinema Citrus are back. There's really no reason. This is a slam dunk. It doesn't require a lot of thought that goes into this for me to rank this first. It's clearly the top dog this season, and there's absolutely no reason to expect any change. It's a great series. It's going to mess you up, but it's going to be completely riveting and really, really gorgeous. Now, the next one on the list is... this one is troubling, and that is Hoshi no Samidare, the Lucifer and Biscuit Hammer. And if anyone has known me for a while, you know that I'm a huge fan of Mizukami Satoshi, who's the mangaka behind this series. I think it's criminal that anime has ignored his manga for this long. There was Planet With, which he wrote directly for anime, that was his breakthrough into anime. And since then it went on to become a manga, which expanded beyond the TV series. But as far as an actual existing Mizukami Satoshi manga, of which there are many, anime has chosen to roundly ignore them for these many years. Biscuit Hammer is certainly his most popular manga. It's not his best, in my opinion, because I think that falls to Spirit Circle, because I think that would be just about anyone's best. That's how great I think that is. Nevertheless, Biscuit Hammer is a phenomenal series. There were intense, heavy rumors that it was going to have a Gainax. Back when Gainax was still Gainax, it was going to have a Gainax adaptation with a Pillows soundtrack. The Pillows their songs are referenced often in the text. It would have been glorious if it had happened. It didn't happen. Supposedly there were some rights issues with the music that got in the way. I don't really know. Anyway, fast forward, the manga has been over for a year, for 10 years, and we're getting an adaptation which surprised the hell out of me, and I think just about everybody. Why it happened now and it never happened before now, I have no idea. I know that Mizukami had high standards for how he wanted this adaptation to play out, but maybe at this point he was more willing to say yes, just because he felt it was now or never, not just for this series, but maybe for anything in his catalog. I don't know. I can't get inside his head. I know he is working on the staff for this series in this on the series composition side, which I think is great. What's not great is it has a really third-rate staff. Nobody of any consequence anywhere in the key staff positions, including the director Nakanishi Nobuaki, and a studio in Naz, which is not, I would say, maybe fourth rate as far as studios go. And for a long time, we had no idea. It was only a few weeks ago that we even got a preview and the name of the studio. We didn't even know that for a long time. And the preview was, frankly, pretty ghastly. And bearing in mind that these preview videos are what they want you to see, that's they're cobbling together the best that they have to show you. So, needless to say, that resounding thud you heard were expectations for this series. And I actually considered knocking it down. It and Made in Abyss are the only two shows in my highest expectations category this season. And I really did consider knocking Hoshi no Samidare down a notch, but I can't do it because it's still freaking Biscuit Hammer, and it's still Mizukami Satoshi. It's at long last, after all this frustration and all this waiting, one of his manga is finally being adapted. If it does wind up being a subpar adaptation, I will weep manly tears over that. But I will continue to hope that his involvement, at least with the writing, at least will get something that holds up narratively. It is a wonderful manga. It's wild, and it's unpredictable, and it's funny, and it's dark, and it really should have had someone like Matsumoto Rie at Bones directing it, but it didn't work out that way. So we're gonna hope for the best with this one. It's a classic old school science fiction comedy manga of the type that anime used to do 20 years ago, left and right, and hasn't done so much lately. It's not how I wanted the anime world to get to know the catalog of this mangaka, who I consider to be one of the greatest of the modern era, but at least it exists. And considering that I never thought that was going to happen, that's something, right? So there you go. Hoshi no Samidare, Lucifer and Biscuit Hammer. It does have a good cast, at least. The key now really is going to be that it has to be two core. If they try to adapt this thing in one core, even with Mizukami helping with the writing, I don't see how they can possibly do that. And that has not been announced yet either. So, I'm not holding out too much hope, frankly, based on everything else about the adaptation being disappointing so far. But if it's two cores, I think there's a chance that this thing can be saved. That's my hope, anyway. And now, hopping down one notch into the second category on my list, which is the mid-table. And 4 shows in the mid-table this time. The first of them being Yofukashi no Uta, Call of the Night. It's funny, Leiden Films is doing both manga adaptations that focus on insomnia. This one and Insomniacs After School, which is coming up next year, which is a manga I love, by the way. I don't actually know the manga here, but my good friend Samu, who, as you know, did a visual podcast with me on the channel not too long ago, he strongly recommends this series. He says that I will definitely like it. So that puts it on top of the sleeper expectations pile for me, because he usually has a pretty good handle on what my tastes are. It's about a boy with insomnia who takes to walking the streets at night, and he meets a young girl, and she says she can cure him, and she may be a vampire. And I trust Samu's taste pretty well, and he loves it. I also would say that the mangaka here was the same one who did the Dagashi Kashi, Dagashi Kashi manga, which I rather liked, and I especially liked the first season of that. The name of the mangaka, the pen name is Kotoyama. So that gives me some hope too. This one has certainly a better staff than has a better staff than Biscuit Hammer, although that's not hard. The director is Tomoyuki Itamura, who did Vanitas no Carte. He is a Shaft guy, but I feel like he's starting to flush that out of his system. He did a pretty decent job on Vanitas. So, Leading Films gets a bad rap. I think they can do pretty well a lot of the time, actually. And what I've seen of this looks pretty good. So my expectations for that one are high. The next one is Hataraku Maou-sama second season, and this is really notable because for a couple of reasons. First of all, there are very few true light novels that I've ever really enjoyed in anime form, and this is one of them. The other thing about this is it was a series that I fully expected to get. I fully expected to get a sequel, almost immediately. In fact, I think when I did my series review post way back in 2012 or 2013, I guess, I think the last line of that post was, it's guaranteed to get another season. Well, I guess I turned out to be right, but I didn't think it was going to take 9 years. And I still, frankly, don't know why it took 9 years. There was plenty of source material even a year or two after the original season, which sold great on DVD and Blu-ray back when that was really important. So it's kind of odd that it's taken this long. I don't know why it's taken this long, but it did, and it's back. This time at Studio 3 Hertz, which is that's a studio that generally speaking has been able to do competent work when given competent material. The previews and such don't look as visually interesting as the first season did. Yeah, that was at White Fox, I believe. And the staff is almost all different except for the gentleman handling series composition, who's Yokotani Masahiro. So I don't know. I expect it'll be fine. It may lack a little bit of the snap that the first season had, but narratively it should be fine, especially with the same person, the same writer adapting it. The only thing that kind of concerns me is my tolerance level for light novel bullshit has gone down quite a bit in the last 9 years. I don't remember there being a lot of light novel bullshit in Hataraku Maou-sama, but it could be that my memory is playing tricks on me. So I don't fully trust my memory on this. I liked it a lot. It came damn close to making my top 10 list in 2013, and it would have, except that I thought the last arc was not as strong as the rest of the series, so it probably just missed. But I'm worried that I've changed enough since that season that if this is more light novel-y than I remember it, that could put a damper on my enjoyment this time. I'm seriously hopeful that's not the case, but I guess we're going to find out soon enough. The next one on that list is Shoot, Goal to the Future. My current soccer anime fave is, of course, Aoashi, and that will continue, it looks like, into the summer. We know it's 2 cores, and there's been nothing to indicate that it's split, so I'm going to assume that's airing. Shoot was based on a soccer manga that was way back in the 90s, that had a TV anime in the 90s and had a theatrical movie in the 90s. The manga ended back in 96, and here we are with another edition. So there you go. Why that happened, I don't know. They've taken the original main character and turned him into a coach who's been abroad and now returns to Japan, and he has a relationship with where he mentors the star of the current high school soccer team. So there you go. I mean, nothing here. An original based on an older series. So it's kind of a crapshoot, but because I love soccer manga and soccer anime so much, I have it in my mid tier. The preview was pretty generic, but we'll see. I'm not going to go based on that. Last one in this category is Soredemo Ayumu wa Yosetekuru, which is, of course, by Yamamoto Soichiro, best known for the Karakai Jozu Tagagi-san series, but pretty much everything he's written now is getting anime adapted, including his lowly ninja series, which is I don't think much of, which is airing right now. Soredemo is better, in my opinion. It's not as good as Takagi-san, but it's a good series. He's aged it up to high school here, and the premise is kind of a very sincere and odd boy first-year student enters the Go Club, immediately starts crushing on the president of the Go Club, who is a very good Go player, and she crushes on him, but he makes a decision that he's not going to confess to her until he beats her at Go, and he's nowhere near ready to do that. It sounds pretty straightforward, kind of rom-com silly, but it's rom-com silly in a good way. It has a lot of the Yamamoto charm to it. Certainly much more than the Ninja series does. Not as much as Takagi-san for me, like I said, but I like the manga. If you like Takagi-san, I think you're going to get something out of this. It has a decent staff at Silver Link. Probably not a huge range of outcomes on this. I think we pretty much know what we're going to get. It's going to be pretty good. In terms of the modestly interested category, as is more commonly the case, it wasn't true in spring, but is more commonly the case with me, this tends to be the biggest category, and so it is here with 8 shows. Anything standing out here? Yurei Deco is Science Saru. I'm a little leery of Science Saru at the moment. Now that Yuasa is no longer directly involved in running the company, they've gotten kind of a bad reputation in terms of their work conditions. Their last couple of efforts have not impressed me too much. We'll see with this. It's kind of an odd, something about a Tom Sawyer Island with junior detective troops or something. It looks pretty surrealistic, which is, that's Science Saru's bailiwick, but we'll see. Isekai Ojisan is one of 3 Isekai named series premiering this season. It's the only one that's not based on a light novel. It's based on a manga. And this one is about a Oji-san, not an Oji-san, an uncle rather than a grandpa, who's in a coma for 17 years. And then he wakes up, and he's a gamer dude, and then some weird comedic vibes happen, and he wakes up as a magical hero in another world. It looks interesting to me. For some reason, whatever reason, I'm getting a bit of a sleeper vibe off this. So that's what I'm going to be paying attention to. Shadow's House second season, I may or may not try covering it. I thought the first season was okay, but flawed. Another one I'm getting a very, very mild sleeper vibe off of is Bucchigire from Geno Studio, which is a Shinsengumi series. The director and writer is Hirakawa Tetsuo, who is fairly experienced and seemingly relatively competent anime director, but he's never really written much of anything original, so it doesn't tell us a lot about writing an original series. As you know, I consider the writer to be the most important figure on an original series. Since he's writing and directing, it certainly is him in this case. So I don't know. Who knows if the writing will be able to carry its weight. I find the visuals and the previews on this look quite good. So this is one Bucchigire, maybe a very mild sleeper vibe for me. As far as others in that category, that's about it. There's other things. Engage Kiss, it has some buzz to it. The same writer's White Album 2. We have a sequel to Kamen Rider called Futo Tante. I never really followed Kamen Rider, so that doesn't do a lot for me. Kame Kuzu Idol, which may be a snarky idol satire, maybe has some potential to be okay. It's about a half-assed male idol who's a slacker and everyone hates his guts, and then he gets possessed by the ghost of a Genki female idol. Who knows? And then there's a story called Seikin ya Tota Maid ga Ayashi, which is by the same author. The manga is by the same author as Jahi-sama. And this is about an 11-year-old and the maid who comes to work at his mansion, and it actually has the romance tag attached to it, which is a little skeevy, but I've actually heard the manga is pretty good, so I'm going to give this a shot on the basis that it might have the shonen maid The Shonen Maid thing, where you don't judge a book by its cover, it won't be as good as Shonen Maid, I can guarantee that, but who knows? So I'll give that one a shot. I also have an uncategorized this time, which is Yojouhan Time Machine Blues, which is also Science Sorrow, but this time it's got Natsume Shingo directing, so that eliminates a lot of the concerns I have with Science Sorrow, because that's a guy who's so well connected, he can get whatever staff he wants, and he's a great director to begin with. This is a sequel, sort of a spin-off series to Yojouhan Shinwan Taikei by the great Morimi Tomihiko. And Morimi Tomihiko is, for my money, one of the greatest writers in Japan, whether you call him a novelist, and he is a novelist. He's done some wonderful things. My favorite of his works would certainly be the Uchuten Kazoku series, which I think are absolutely wonderful. I don't consider this Tatami Galaxy series to be on the same level, although it's very popular. It's a little self-aware for my taste. It doesn't have some of the emotional authenticity of Uchuten Kazoku or Penguin Highway, for example, but it is incredibly interesting and imaginative, especially if you love Kyoto, where all of his series seems to be set, or just about all. So the only question with this one is, how is it going to be airing? It's going to be released in theaters at the end of September, but there are going to be 6 TV episodes that are going to be streamed on Disney Plus in Japan. But there's been no announcement as to when that's going to happen. So I stuck it in this preview because I didn't want to ignore it, because with Natsume Shingo directing Morimi Tomihiko, that's big, and this should be, basically it's a spin-off of Tatami Galaxy. I mean, this is a pretty big deal. This would be a very, very high expectation series for me if I knew it was airing or even being streamed in summer. It would be in the top highest expectations category. But because it's not, I put it in uncategorized. I'm going to assume it's most likely going to stream at some point during the summer, and I didn't want to ignore it, so it's here. Keep an eye out on that one. As far as my sleepers for the season, definitely Call of the Night, but that may be too hyped to be a sleeper. And then Isekai Ojisan is probably the only one I have. Even Bucchigire very, very slightly, but that would be really Isekai Ojisan would be the only other one I have a sleeper vibe on, I would say. On the OVA front, it's Deadsville as usual, but we do have another Tonikaku Cawaii series OVA called Seifuku, which means uniform. That's coming out. Don't know the details on the plot, but more Tonikaku Cawaii is always great. We have a season 2 of that scheduled for some time, but we don't know when. Probably 2023. On the theatrical front, another Osomatsu-san movie, Hipipo-Zoku to Kagayaku Kajitsu. Don't know what to expect there, but I liked the last season of Osomatsu-san, or the most recent season, I guess it would be better to say, which was a little more reflective, a little less snarky and crazy. Maybe had just an ounce of earnestness to it. We'll see. I'm always interested to see what those guys get up to. Maybe we'll even get another TV season someday, although I've had a vibe for a while that the guys behind it are about ready to move on. But another movie. The Tsurune movie, Hajimari no Isha. Kyoto Animation basically decides what gets sequels based on not so much how popular a series is, but how much of it they own. And since they don't own Hyoka, which is the best thing they've ever done, in my opinion, that has never gotten a sequel. They do own Tsurune, so despite being one of the least popular series they've ever done, it already got an OVA, and now it's getting a movie. I actually like Tsurune. It's one of the few series I started blogging, dropped, and then picked back up. And I did really enjoy elements of it, especially the mentor relationship with the main character and the Shinto priest, who is also the archery instructor. I thought that was really effective. It was gorgeous. It's Kyoto Animation. So it looks like those two are the main characters centered in the movie too, from what I can tell. So that might be something really promising. And the last but not least in September is Ame wo Sugeru Hyouryuu Danchi, which is by Studio Colorido. And if you don't know Studio Colorido, they did Penguin Highway among other things, but those guys are they've earned a reputation as being one of the most progressive and interesting anime studios out there. Kind of a for creators by creators anime studio. The director here is Yamamoto Koji. Excuse me, not of course not. He's the producer. It's Ishidahiro Yasu, who's one of the young phenoms of anime. He's about 30, 33, 34 years old. As I said, he's already directed Penguin Highway, among other things. Clearly a big talent. Story-wise, this one, he's also writing it. This is about a bunch of childhood friends who, sixth graders, and they visit a housing complex that's going to be demolished, and where they grew up. And they have a lot of memories there, but when they're there, they get caught up in some kind of a rip in the time continuum or something, and end up in an alternate universe, which is underwater or something like that. I don't know exactly. It looks, it's a premise that doesn't grab me immediately and say this is going to be great, but based on the pedigree of the studio and the director writer, that has my full attention. That would certainly be my top film prospect for the summer. But this is a summer, often anime summer is big for theatrical films. We have a blockbuster by one of the big names like Shinkai or Hosoda or somebody. Nothing like that this summer. But that film, the Ishida film for Colorido, does interest me a lot. And that, kids, is the season preview for summer. And pretty much bank on Made in Abyss being great. Hope for the best with Hoshi no Samidare. And let's see what happens with the rest of the schedule. Will Samu be right? Will Hataraku Maou-sama carry the mantle all these years later? Will something step up and surprise from nowhere? We'll see. But it definitely fall. That's when all the big dogs are hunting. That's the hype season. But there's enough here to keep me interested. And hopefully, the big variable is certainly Biscuit Hammer. That somehow shocking the world and being as good as it should be would on alone would be enough to make summer a really good anime season. So, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. It's not a bad philosophy when you're talking about anime prognostication. Hope you guys are having a good summer. Enjoy, stay cool. If you're in Australia, stay warm, or New Zealand, sorry. And we'll talk again. I'm sure I'll be back with some videos in the intervening time, but of course we'll be back with the fall preview too when it comes time for that. And as always, I wish you the best, and please, please, please do, please stay frosty.